Chapter 18, The Threadmaster. "Is there anything you wish to say in your defense?" the mayor asked Despereaux. The mouse glanced around the courtroom. For perhaps the first time in his life, Despereaux felt small and afraid. "Well, it was a very good story, and," he said, "she was a very beautiful princess." "So you admit that you had contact with a human being?" "Yes," Despereaux said, smiling at the memory of Pea's kiss. "I did." The audacity of his last statement set off a whole new round of murmurs. The judges huddled to consult among themselves at once. Their verdict came swiftly. "Despereaux Tilling," said the mayor, "the judgment of this court is not an easy one, but it is clear. Our laws are here to protect us and our way of life, and when one of our citizens strays from that way of life, he becomes a threat to us all. It's an easy question. Are you a man or are you a mouse? And your actions have told us that you have a great deal of trouble being a mouse. It is the judgment of this court," the mayor continued, "that you should be banished from these walls forever. You shall be remanded into the custody of Hovis the Threadmaster, who will prepare you for your descent into the unknown world that lies beneath us. You shall be exiled, alone, into the dungeons of Dor, from which no mouse and no light has ever escaped." For once the courtroom was stunned into silence. "Is there anything you wish to say to clear your conscience or your soul?" the mayor asked Despereaux. "I don't think so," he replied. "Very well," said the mayor. And that, as they say, was that. There was no time for goodbyes, and there wasn't anyone to say goodbye to anyway. Despereaux had to leave immediately. Hovis, the Threadmaster, was waiting. Purrum, purrum, purrum. A slow and steady drumbeat accompanied Despereaux's march from the courthouse. The town square was jammed with mice. It had been a long time since a mouse was exiled, and at this rate, who knew when the next one would be? Mouse guards escorted Despereaux through the dense mob. The other mice gasped and cut a wide path for him as he passed. A few hooted and jeered. Hidden among the crowd, Lester and Antoinette Tilling watched too. "Despereaux!" Antoinette cried. "Shh!" said Lester. "My baby!" she wailed. "Quiet, dear," whispered Lester. "There's nothing to be done." Despereaux's parents could only watch as their son was led toward the back of the mouse village. He was entering the darkest part of the mouse world, where few lived and fewer traveled. Certainly no respectable mouse. The streets dwindled into dusty alleys, and the buildings turned back into what they once were: broken urns, rotting shoes, and other trash. At the edge of this neglected part of town, the crowd fell away. No one was willing to tread any closer to either the darkness or the fearsome-looking mouse who led the prisoner. The guards thrust Despereaux at Hovis the Threadmaster, then turned and ran away as fast as they could. Despereaux looked up at the Threadmaster, who was shrouded in a long leather coat and a black hood that hid his face. He was an alarmingly large mouse, especially next to his tiny prisoner. Hovis turned and led the mouse across the narrow bridge. At the end, they came to the door of an upside-down glass dome, the Threadmaster's lair. Hovis motioned abruptly for Despereaux to enter. In the distance, the crowd could barely watch. Despereaux stepped into the dome. Inside was an old, broken sewing box. The lair was gloomy and cramped. In every direction, spools and spools of thread rose above the mouse in frightening towers. To Despereaux, the thread looked as thick as rope. He shivered, knowing it was all used for one sinister purpose. "Stand there," Hovis said, pointing to the top of a spool of thread. He seemed to study Despereaux for a moment. Then he selected a spool of red thread and pulled out a couple of lengths. "Red?" Despereaux asked. Hovis took a sharp knife from his belt. "So they tell me," he said, swiftly cutting the thread. Despereaux looked closer at the large mouse. Hovis had not selected the thread by sight, but touch. The Threadmaster was blind. In one fluid moment, Hovis expertly tied the thread tightly around Despereaux's waist so that its length streamed behind. So you're the brave one, Hovis said. I guess, said Despereaux. Hovis finished the knot. That's good. It'll carry well down there. Despereaux looked at the long, scarlet string that followed him. Wear it proudly, said the large mouse. There's no shame. Despereaux nodded. It's time, said the Threadmaster.